Hello and welcome to my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I constructed this image. Now this is the sort of thing that you may see on a forest floor, for instance. But actually the whole thing was produced in the studio. This gives you a lot more control over the composition, the lighting, etc. So the image makes use of a lay flat technique, whereby you have the camera supported directly above your subject, and everything is laid flat on this very low table that I've got here. So the camera has a 24-70 zoom lens at the 70mm end, which gives a relatively narrow field of view, so you can shoot between the legs of the tripod. Now the particular tripod that I'm using, I can set it up in an asymmetric manner. So the front legs, the ones that I've got here, are actually a lot longer than the back leg, which means that they can spread out more, which again gives you a bit more flexibility on the field of view. As always with my videos, I have it tethered into Capture One software so that we can all see what's going on. Now, as usual, one of the first things that I will do is just take a blank frame with no flash, just to see what contamination we're getting from the house lights. Okay, so I can trigger the camera from the software. And there we go. You can see from that at an aperture of 2.8, which is what I've got set on the lens, with a shutter speed of 1/250th of a second, which is the sync speed for that camera, at 100 ISO, we're getting quite a lot of contamination from the house lights. So I'm not going to be using the lens at 2.8. It's more likely to be around 11 to 16. We'll start off at f11. So I'll just do another test at that. There we go, and you can see the image has virtually disappeared altogether, which is what we want. Okay, so with that exercise complete, it's probably time to start thinking about the lighting. Now in this studio environment, I'm going to be using Studio Flash. So the first thing I'm going to do is just put a flash trigger on the camera. So just pop that on there. This will allow me to control the flash and also sync it to the camera. So we'll just turn that on. Now if this were in a forest, then you could end up with all sorts of different sorts of lighting on here. If there was a sunny day, for instance, you'd have what equates to a point light source. On the other hand, if it was a cloudy day, then you would have a really overcast sky, which would be the equivalent of having a large diffused light source, such as a big softbox. So what I'm going to do is show you the difference between those two types of light, and just show you how you can create that in a studio. So I'm using a pack and head system. This is the Profoto Pro 10 pack, and I'm using that in conjunction with Profoto Pro Plus heads. Now within the head is everything you need, really. There's a modelling light and flash tube at the front. There's a fan in the body of the head to keep everything cool, and the cable just plugs into the pack. There we go. This will give us the equivalent of our point light source for a sunny day. So this is just set to an arbitrary energy level of 5 at the moment. So I'll just take a test shot and we'll see whether we're in the right ballpark. And straight out of the stocks there, yeah, that's not too bad at all. possibly could come up slightly. I'll add half a stop to it and we'll shoot that again. There we go, that's a little brighter. And you can see the sort of effect that you've got there. If I just zoom in a bit, you can see you've got quite pronounced shadows. It does look like it was shot on a sunny day in the winter in a forest. So that's one way that you could light this particular subject. It's really simple, and if you wanted to, you could just use a fairly standard flash gun for this instead of a studio flash. You'd end up with the same result. But it's not really the sort of result that I want for this image. The idea I have is something which is a lot softer. So the equivalent of doing something on a overcast day in the forest. So for that, I'm going to need a fairly large softbox. Here we go. So this is another Pro Plus head, like the one that I've just used, but this time I've got a 5-foot softbox on the end of it. Now I've got it on this rather complicated looking rig, which will allow me to place the softbox directly above the camera. And that way I'm going to end up with a coaxial lighting. You'll see what I mean as we carry on. So the first thing to do is just to take it up in the air slightly. So I'll just undo the clamps, like so. And we'll just wind it up. There we go. And now I'll just swing that round. So that is directly above the camera position. And just fire that off. Now immediately you should be able to see that that has given a really different result. This is what we did to start with the point light source, and this is what we have with the diffused light source, the softbox. And you can see from that it is considerably softer. Now interestingly, the distance this is from the subject does make a big difference, even at this sort of scale. And just to illustrate that, I'm just going to wind this up quite a long way, and you'll be able to see the difference on the screen, hopefully. There we are. Now obviously, winding it up out of the way like that is going to decrease the energy hitting the subject due to the inverse square law. So I would guess that I'll probably need about another stop on that. So let's just give that a bit more energy. And we'll just fire that again. So that guess at a stop is about right, I think. And you can see, if I just flick between these two, this is where it was close to the camera, and this is where it's further away. And you can see there is a difference in the texture of the light. By taking it away, we've actually introduced almost a highlight. And this is because, from the subject's point of view, moving the light further away has actually made it smaller. Therefore, it's becoming more of a point light source. A big one, but a point light source. And that is what causes the difference in texture of the light. Now for the image that I want to produce today, I actually want it as close to the camera as I can get it. So I'm just going to take it back down again. And remember, we did add a stop to the energy level, we need to now just take that back off again and just retake that shot. And you can see from that we've gone back to a much softer rendition. Again, this is what we had with the softbox much higher up, and this is what we've got now. And that's exactly what I want. So with all that set, it just remains to import this into Photoshop and do the post-processing on the image. So here we are in Photoshop. And if I just zoom into this image, you can see that there's an awful lot of detail in here. And the lighting has really helped to bring out all the different textures and so on that we've got going on within the image. So in the original image that I showed at the beginning of the video, you could see that one particular leaf was more or less picked out and became dominant, and it was this one here. And the way that I did that is what we're going to go through next. So the first little job is just to duplicate the background. So I'll just make a duplicate there, like so. Now on this background copy, I'm just going to add a layer mask. But I'm going to add an inverse one, so I'm going to hold down the Alt key whilst I click on the mask symbol, which will give me an inverse mask. So it's hidden all of this layer. So if I turn off the background, the whole thing will go clear. So just to aid me with that, what I'm going to do now is just swap the foreground and background colours so that I'm actually painting on the mask in white. So if I just take the background away again, and now wherever I paint, it will bring back that particular layer. I'm just going to make my brush a little bigger. And this is the leaf that we want to bring in to the image. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in a bit, which will make life a little easier. Now, because this is a mask, what I can do is just swap back to black again. I'll make my brush a little smaller. And I can just paint away all the rest of the background apart from the leaf itself. Now, it doesn't matter if you make the odd mistake because you're only painting the mask. You're not actually altering the image itself. So with the leaf roughly cut out, you can just add a few little bits to that, like for instance where the stem is. What I'm going to do is just make my brush a lot softer so I can fade out the stem. In fact, I'll make the brush a bit bigger as well. There we go. And now with that done, I'll just set quite a large brush. Just get rid of all the other bits that we don't need anymore. Like that. So here we have our leaf, which is roughly cut out. And if I just bring the background back in again, you'll see that that will merge in exactly because it was taken from the background layer. So far, so good. If I just zoom out a little. At this point, if we just leave the background copy alone and move on to the background itself, at this point I'm just going to make another duplicate. Click on OK. So I'm playing with this layer here now. So with that selected, I'm going to go to Adjustments and add an adjustment layer. Now the adjustment layer that I'm going to go for is the vibrance one. And what I can do, for instance, if I take the saturation right down, you'll see that this is the leaf that we've masked out, so basically it won't affect it. So what I can do is just take the whole of the background down a little, somewhere around there, and maybe just add a little vibrance to that background as well, just to bring it back. Something like that. So now if I just turn that on and off, that was the before and that's the after. Possibly a little too subtle. Let's just take that saturation down a bit more. Somewhere around there. That's the before and that's the after. And I think that works quite well. So finally, I just need to add a crop. I'm going to go for 16:9, and we'll just crop in and arrange our leaf on an interesting point, like so. So there we have it. A nice little image there, full of detail and a few tips and tricks in Photoshop along the way. Well, I hope you enjoyed seeing that, and if you like seeing these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.